What up? It's Tom from Cannabis Legalization News. Tonight, Miggy and I sit down with Chris Walsh, the CEO of MJBizDaily, and we talk about MJBizCon. Come see me out there on October 19th to the 22nd in Vegas. And don't forget to smash them thumbs up and click subscribe and the bell in case you don't get notice of these things in the future. And with that, let's get on with the show.
What's up?
We are getting really close to Ohio being open for business. And as a result of that, we have some stuff that I'm working on, taking a dispensary business model, not business, financial model, and adapting it to what the application requires. So that's going to be fun. And then we also have a filing deadline today for appeals periods for wrongly scored applications that were denied a dispensary lottery in Illinois. So the industry is just cranking along and growing. Thanks for joining us, Biggie. How's things?
Good, man. Good. You know, I smoked a little too much and got distracted, so we almost didn't meet today.
My goodness, you got to be careful when you medicate. Sometimes you have to prioritize and titrate accordingly.
You know how it is, man. I'm feeling good, man. I'm really excited about this guest today. Like, you know, I've been getting more and more on the quality and business side of things. I've been looking as far as like what I've been doing for what I do for a living. You know, I'm in quality, so like. And troubleshooting, and I get caught up in that shit, and then I get in the zone. Kind of like when you're driving somewhere for a long time, and you just can focus, and that's where I'm at. You know, cannabis helps me, like, you know, just kind of like fuck everything else. I'm gonna do the thing that I'm supposed to do, and here we are. You know, this is one of the things I'm supposed to do.
Right, I know, but like, do you think you're ever gonna go to like a business convention in cannabis?
Oh yeah, that means it's bound to happen. What I'm really concerned, my focus right now is the you know, it's so funny, dude. Like, I think the boring stuff, life is boring if you do it right. Like this whole policy, having a living, you know, the checks and balances.
I don't know, man. I mean, life could be fulfilling if you do it right. It could have meaning, and like you could make you feel proud and stuff. But yeah, it shouldn't be boring. Like, I was clipping my toenails the other day. Ugh, so over that.
First world issues, though. I'm saying, like you know, we have an opportunity in this. Like, we've been advocating for a long time, and it just turns out like we're responsible adults who, like, holy shit, our jobs can transfer over. We can do things in cannabis and help the plant and help the conversation all together. So yeah, no. So the QMS part right now, I'm looking at are you familiar with ASTM?
ASTM, it has to do with certain standards for, and I don't know what TM stands for, accredited standards for trade and management. I don't know.
It's a standard industry that's been around for over 100 years, but they're like the go-to when you want to do like a reference for, say, safety or a product. So now they're in the cannabis game. They're doing a let me see if I can share this with you.
Our applications will reference them. And so we also like to reference the focus standards. And then there'll be like ISO standards for GMP that we're going to have to start referencing in our SOPs, especially on the cultivation and you know, manufacturing side, because those are the ones that the federal acts are going to regulate, just like they do in Canada.
Yeah, I know. But so this is exciting to me whenever I see like this boring, sexy, the rules. You're like, you know, the testing. One of the things I've really never, like, when people talk about THC percentages, I just roll my eyes because there's no established way yet. The consumer's still ignorant, but if we in the background,
it's like Moody's, it's like the Big Short with when they're rating those bonds, and then the bonds are just junk, and you're like, really? They're just going to go down to the testing lab right there that says it's going to be 31%.
Right, and as someone who's been in the industry, I can see I've seen a lot of bullshit, and so I would like to help champion like the best policy out there, the best way we can do things, you know, and, you know, enlighten the consumer. Because, dude, once I get my story out there, there's a tale to be told about things in metrology.
Go to the BizCons then. Have you ever been to a marijuana trade show?
No, but I do want to. And
that is where the industry lives. The industry is kind of like a circus to a certain extent, in the sense that there are trade shows and then people buy booths for thousands of dollars. And then they say, yes, I'm in of course I can get you that cannabis license. Do you want lights? We got lights. Newts. It's newts. And that's essentially what the cannabis industry has been growing on, has been all these trade shows. You know, we have these shirts, that's the back of them has trade shows. Some have been riddled by COVID. Some we actually are going to still be able to do. And the one that is going to be not next week, October 19th through the 22nd in Vegas is one of the granddaddies of them all.
Yes. Yes,
Yeah.
no, I really do. Events, and cannabis and events come hand in hand. Kind of like the puff puff pass. We are social people, and it's definitely this is definitely the big one coming up. It's kind of like prom, right? The thing that people are like, oh, we can't wait for this. This is definitely one of the ones coming up, right? The big hoodoo-doos.
Well, you should go to it. I'm going to try to make it, but I'm having some issues getting out of Humboldt County on Wednesday, the 20th. And so Spirit Airlines, blaming them.
Oh man, well, again, I'm in a better position where I can do things like that. But yeah, you buy my ticket. Let's do this.
No, revenues have been, we've been reinvesting the proceeds. And so
No, I know, man. I'm just talking
yeah.
shit. But let's have our guest on. Let's talk to our guest. Hey, Chris.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good. Chris Walsh, thank you so much for joining us. Can you introduce yourself to the audience?
Sure. Yeah, I helped start MJ Biz in 2011, and we do media and analysis and news and market research on the cannabis industry, which we've been doing for over a decade. And then, as you both alluded to, we also host in-person trade shows and conferences, and our big one, MJBizCon, is coming up very soon, and we're excited to be back live and in person and getting this industry together.
Fantastic. Yeah. 2011. Man, I had so much student loan debt then. That was pretty much when I was told to stop promoting a book. That's how I met Miggy from, back in MySpace days 10 years ago. And I became a financial litigator. Tell you what. How is it grown? How, 10 years later, look at how much changes. So how much growth have you seen in your business in that 10 years?
Yeah, it's been quite a ride. When we first started, the two co-founders hired me to help launch it. And basically, it wasn't an industry taken very seriously back then. And I was a mainstream business journalist working at newspapers and covering all sorts of industries like the skiing business and sports business and the economy and high tech. And so we didn't really know what this industry was going to do or what its potential was, but we knew there was a need for a professional approach to covering the news so that people had, analysis and an outline of what's going on, the developments that they could rely on. That wasn't, a guy sitting in his basement blogging and just making stuff up or just ranting about the government, right? That's kind of what it was then. So we were like, hey, this is a new industry. It's coming out of nowhere, and it needs the things that other industries have, like a professional trade publication. Yeah. And so, at that time, I think just over a dozen states had legalized medical. Mm-hmm. And we pegged the industry around that at about 1 million, 1.5 million. There were no numbers anywhere. So it was, we had to take what we could get and come up with estimates. And so it was a really small industry in general. And then what we saw was over the last 10 years, this industry has exploded. And it went way beyond what we ever expected. I mean, not only on the medical side, which I always felt would gain traction because of what it can do for people and how it can help. And if people just realize that, we'd see people accept it and begin to legalize it. So we saw that play out. But the whole adult use / recreational side was amazing to see. And I remember when Colorado and Washington legalized, I was like, I don't know if this is actually going to be a real industry. Like, is the federal government just going to really let businesses crop up and sell to adults?
How was that? Because now we're going back to when the Seahawks played the Broncos.
Well, let's not bring that up. Let's not bring that up.
Super Bowl. So ironic. That was what the first Super Bowl was. It was the two legal states. I had just gotten, I was lucky to make it out of Seattle before that blizzard that hit Chicago on the day that they actually played that game. And it was such a trip to be able to go and buy legally, or what you thought was legally. Some people would just deliver it to you back then.
Yeah.
8 years later, it's pretty much breaking out everywhere.
Well, yeah. So we were at 1.5 billion in sales, and now we're at 20 billion with the expectation we have the potential to double that in just a couple of years because the train is out of the station. The momentum is everywhere you look. Mm-hmm. This industry is growing and thriving, and the future looks bright in general.
Do you see? Because I mean, you've been around like all these, like you're saying, like it's not the guy in the basement blogging, but also like, there's like all these like Canna everything. Everybody has their Canna something, but you guys came out MJ Biz Daily as like a business, like it's a very clean website. You have a U.S. and international option, and then you also cover the hemp industry. But like the business side, like you're saying, like the talking about stocks and taxes, like were you nervous about like content for that kind of shit? Like, does it have people out there as far as like who's going to read this? They're like all these little basement bloggers mad about like 9/11 or something, and then you're like, hey, this is a business.
Well, yeah, it was what we had to pivot along the way, because we initially set out, and our company's name was Dispensary Insider, and we wanted to provide like really good intel on how you can operate and run your dispensary specifically, and figure out what's on your shelves and how you can increase your profit margins. The industry wasn't very sophisticated back then from a business standpoint, so people weren't really interested in that stuff, and they weren't going to pay for it, So then I was like, we determined that the industry just needed a really good news source that only focused on the industry and on the business side. It's very easy to go down the path of writing for consumers, but we're like, no, we're business people and we know what we need. This industry needs it too. So we've had pivots along the way. But to your point, yeah, at the beginning, it was hard to figure out, like any business, where is your market? How are you going to make money? And how do you best serve your clients or your audience, or however you defined it? So it took us a while to figure it out. And then the real, iteration was, we realized the industry needed a professionally run trade show, so where business could be done. And at that time, you had quote unquote medical marijuana conferences. It had barely anything to do with medical at all. So if you were thinking about, hey, this is more of a clinical, pharmaceutical, or just medical industry, that wasn't being discussed really. It was, Cypress Hill, and it was bongs all over the show floor, and it was people smoking everywhere. And we were like, look, if this industry is going to be taken seriously and it's going to grow, it needs professionalism. So that's what we set out to do. And so we said, let's host a real, legit trade show that is meant to help the industry and help the people that are starting and running businesses. And that was another iteration that then has now become MJBizCon, where in 2019, the last time we could hold it in person, we had 35,000 attendees and over 1,100 exhibitors in the Las Vegas Convention Center. And I just want to point out, our first year of holding this in 2012, we couldn't find a venue that would take us in Denver. And they were like, oh, we don't want a marijuana conference. So we did end up finding one. But now we're in the Las Vegas Convention Center in two of their major halls. And that just shows you how much this industry has changed over the years and how accepted it is now.
There's a lot of conventions in Vegas itself. Like, why do you think Vegas is such a hot spot? I mean, casinos? I mean, is that the go-to? But I like for me, events, cannabis events, especially, the Cypress Hill stuff. But, I think because the after parties, where a lot of your business is done, like at a bar over a beer or a joint, next thing you know, you just, like, for us, last time Tom was in town, we had a guest on, and over a beer, after a beer, I got my son into a new college. Like just like that. He just made a phone call, and that's how business happens, where it's like, hey, I'll now sell your shirts at my store or whatever.
Serendipity. Yep.
Yeah. Do you find like that you're still back to that Cypress Hill because the consumer is both like country and Western, like there's diversity as the consumer goes. So are you trying to entertain that?
We're focused on the business side, and you can apply that to the business side, because a lot of people in the industry, if not most, if not all, also participate in the cannabis culture. So it's really, with the focus on business, again, we don't aim at consumers. It's the people running businesses and making decisions and investors. And but we embrace the culture side as well, because that's the backbone of the industry. In terms of Vegas, we made the decision to go there. We held our first conference in Denver. Then we went to Seattle area. I say area because it was outside of Seattle. It was in Auburn. And the only place that would take us there was a racetrack.
Oh, wow.
Where we had our second one, right? And so then we'd made
So you guys had like a dirt track?
No, it was like
the infield was the exhibitors?
No, it was inside. It was in their main area where people bet, and they pipe and draped it off. And
how many people went to number two?
Number two is it's been a while since I looked at it. It was probably like double, which was nice. It was solid growth. And then what happened is, we decided to go to Vegas because it's the convention capital of the country. People like Vegas, people hate Vegas, but it has a lot of positives to holding an event there. People like to go out. You can have those parties. You can meet at those bars. There's entertainment, and it just knows how to do events. So when we did that, some people were saying, why are you going to Nevada? They have this weird medical program. They don't even have regulations around it. Why aren't you going to Colorado or Washington? But we just felt for the long term, we wanted to establish this base in Vegas, and it paid off because Vegas and Nevada is now a thriving recreational market.
Yeah.
And they're doing things that in the recreational side with retail that other states aren't doing at all. It's fun. It's like there's some of these are like Vegas dispensaries. Like you can imagine, it's lit up floors and drone balloons and moving in sync. It's like it's Vegas, right? So
nice.
We're happy to be there.
Yeah, that's fantastic. That's really, really cool. And you've always approached it from that business perspective, and you have this very large website. Do you have like writing standards that you have for your site when you're doing publications?
Yeah, and that's what we built this on. I mean, my background and the two co-founders, we all had a journalism background to some degree. That was my major field, and both of them had run trade publications before, and so we built the company with those types of standards and ethics. And that goes across everything we do. And a lot of people criticize journalists these days, and I get it. I'm from the media. My father is a White House correspondent. Like, I've been steeped in it, but you can do it right, or you can approach it right. And that's what we've tried to do. And it's like, it's serious business news. It's, we're trying to get to the meat of the issue. We're trying to be objective. We're not writing about companies because they're an advertiser, so we were approaching it in a more traditional way that helped us build our credibility. And that was our backbone of everything we've done since then, is approaching our events and our market research with that same approach.
Wow.
Speaking of that market research, we actually, one of the things that I do is you have to cite reasons when you're making up financial models. And so you have to kind of take a look at fact books. So sometimes we'll be citing the Marijuana Business Fact Book. This is the 8th edition. Which edition are they on now?
Wow, we launched our first one in 2012. So
almost up to maybe 9 or 10.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yep.
And
that's so neat.
Well, you need that stuff. I mean, you need to understand how large the market is, what the rules of the game are, if it's open, if it's limited. And then from there, there's so many other places that you can turn to for data regarding the market so that you can create your financial models that you need for your business plans. But cool. Thanks for making this, man. It really helped.
Well, let me just give you a quick backstory. When we first launched that, again, there was barely any data on this industry. States weren't really tracking it. So a lot of states didn't even have regulations or licenses. So It was really hard to figure out the size and scope and all the intricacies. So I spent countless hours and weeks and months on our first one trying to figure out, like, what can we put together that's meaningful and that isn't just a bunch of gibberish and numbers thrown out there, that has some basis in logic into how you got the numbers and how you figured this all out. And I still remember I would be staying up till 3 or 4 in my house researching the laws of various states and trying to cobble together what I could to put up some reasonable estimates on everything. Now we're in a much better position. There's a lot more data out there. So in some cases it's easier, but the industry is a lot more complex and a lot bigger. So in some cases it's more difficult.
Yeah, and I just was updating our dispensary model. And so we've looked into Michigan data. Michigan does a good job publishing data. And if you guys are tuning in and you want to influence the regulations in your state, require that your state publish the data on how much is being bought, of what. And it really makes it a lot easier for you to track growth and also for you to track like the revenue and trends. But sometimes when I try to see the data from like Illinois, it's very opaque. It's just a group line item, like 4 columns. And you're like, wow, really doesn't give you much. So, regulations are interesting. I really like how Washington State, there's a lot of decent data out of there, like i502.org or something. But trying to find that data had to have been mind-bogglingly frustrating and complex back 10 years ago when you were putting together the first one.
Yeah, it was. I remember those days, and I'm glad we did it. But every state handled it completely differently. And they still do now, but back then a lot of them weren't reporting any data. Again, you couldn't even figure out the number of licensed retailers in some state because they didn't have that. They weren't even tracking it.
That's
crazy.
Oh, so that's just a powerful tool that you have there. I mean, I bet you can't wait until federal legalization and it's all the same we just spoke to a gentleman from Germany, and apparently, you know, how we do it state by state, you know, the cluster F that we have versus they're going to just do a one sweep and all the rules will be the same, you know, all about it. Man, that's a helpful tool right there.
It'd be nice to get there here one day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If everything could just be regulated the same way, so everything was speaking the same language, because you have to, you're doing translations of pounds per light to grams per square foot. And you're like, all right, can we get any type of standardization? Tax, when you're trying to like account for your taxes in a particular area, it might be jurisdictionally specific. I mean, so you're going to have, and then there's the federal IRC 280E. It is a complex industry to try to operate in more than one jurisdiction.
Oh yeah, I mean, and if you step back though, it makes sense because could it have been done differently? Sure, but every state has had to go their own way with cannabis, and excuse me, I tickled my throat. And so this is a brand new industry that is not federally legal, so every state's figuring it out on their own, and they have different considerations and concerns and hesitations and optimism. And you know, when you take something as difficult and this has a stigma around it, like cannabis, you know, I don't really see another way it could have worked because there was no overarching guidance, and every state is just like, okay, we're going to pick and choose and cherry pick things that we think work, and oops, that didn't work, and this state's having a problem with that. So it's this iteration. It's a long maturation process, right? And people are learning. That we're all learning as we go.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think the public in general, you would be surprised still learning about cannabis. I mean, Texas with their beef with Delta 8 and CBD. I mean, you know, once everybody has an even playing field, then we can have a level conversation. But, you know, I bet you see, being that you're business oriented, though, I imagine like every time a new state comes out, you see like hits pop in that state. It must be like, oh, I see a lot of investors coming this way, you know, analytic wise.
That's a big part of what we do is help people identify opportunities and where they are and how to navigate them. So whenever a state legalizes, yeah, absolutely, you have a surge of interest from the people in that state, and you now have a surge in interest from people outside the state that are looking to expand in the current industry. So everyone's got their eye on what's the next state, what are the opportunities, what is the regulatory structure, what is this going to look like, do I have a play here? And what we're seeing more and more these days is the mainstream business professionals, entrepreneurs, and investors are now taking the same approach. So I've spent the last couple months, as the travel world has opened up, you know, speaking at mainstream events. So, you know, speaking at packaging conferences and speaking at sweets and snacks and convenience store. And because all these people in these other sectors are seeing this as a legit industry now, and they're like, is there a crossover for us? Yeah, so you're seeing a lot of mainstream interest right now.
No, they call us all the time over at CannabisIndustryLawyer.com. I mean, the amount of leads that we'll get for people that are they're entrepreneurs and they're very interested in getting in as their new areas open up. It's just nonstop. I mean, one state will go on fire and then another state will go on fire. And so right now, Ohio's really popping off because of the dispensary round for the 73 they have there. But their rules are completely different than the dispensary rules for what they did in Illinois. And they'll probably be completely different than in New Jersey, and we still don't know what those are. But people are eager to get in.
Well, and I think what's really been one of the more recent milestones that is fueling this is legalization in New York, and to a slightly lesser extent, New Jersey. And I think the reason is New York's the financial capital of the world. Yes, it's a big state with a lot of consumers, so that's attractive. But now you have, in the headquarters of all these banks and investment funds and firms, this is in their backyard. And it has been in medical, but it was just medical. And I think that it's a state that is really pushing things forward, because now these people's minds are clicking, right, in the halls of power in the money world. Yeah. And they're like, okay, we're interested now too, because we see it and we feel it and it's in our state. So I do think that was a big development over the past year, along with all the other ones too, like the other states legalizing.
I think you had a good point though about the whole, like, it's medical though, like how people with money didn't see cannabis as a viable investment. Like Tom and I've said, cannabis has proven to be recession proof. You know, we've gone through a pandemic. It's been proven essential. I mean, what else can we do?
Yeah. And you're right.
You know, that get a tax break from IRC 280E. That'd be pretty. Maybe like the United States could not treat it like it's heroin for once. You know.
And that's what's ridiculous about this situation. I mean, you have 38 states that have legalized some form of marijuana, and you have 19 that have legalized adult use, and you have a government that has not changed one single thing.
Yeah.
Since 1971.
Yeah.
Planes haven't fallen out. People are running, paying their bills, their light bills. It's the reefer madness of stigma is still stench. It's a stinky stench that it's like.
It's in California. It's in Washington State. I mean, depending on where you are, and so like Tony Gallo from Sapphire Security. Shout out to him. He shared a cool thing on LinkedIn today. It was. Yeah, great. He'll probably be at BizCon in a week or two. And so, but it was the map of New Jersey with all the counties that had opted out. And so it's like 2/3 red opt-out counties. And so like, even though it's legal in New Jersey, it's not, and then if you look at a map of California, there's still a lot of opt-outs there.
Yeah.
And same in Michigan, every election cycle that goes on, because they can referendum. So at a local level, it's still being legalized, even in states like California and Michigan. It's really fascinating.
It is. And as what you find is that it's all the rural areas of states, which make up the bulk of a state, right? Not its population, but its size.
Yeah.
Right.
So when you look at the map and it's like all red for bans, and then you have the pockets of blue, or green, or however they color code it, that have basically allowed recreational sales. It's the major population centers.
Yeah, and I hate that that's a factor though. But like the stigma, it's like, why? For no good reason. Like the prohibition exists for no good reason still. Like there's no valid, whether you're right, blue, green, none of this shit matters. Like, we're all, as American citizens, individually or as an all, we all should be equal. And any prohibition for no good reason exists. Like that's the one hanging like thing can be used against us, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I like to bitch a lot. I'm sorry, Chris. Like the business side of things for me, like as you heard earlier, like I'm into the quality side. Like I'm just I was a young pharmaceutical dealer, like I had my hands, but then as you get older, you realize, you know what? I don't want to own a restaurant. I don't want to be a manager, but I do like writing and I do like science. And so that's kind of where I've led my life. And so like, but I really cheer on everybody else who wants to sell and grow. That's my, and then your business website, I've been going through looking as we're talking. It's just so clean and adult-like. And then that's what I love about it. Like you guys, great information, that you have going on there, man.
Thank you.
And to stay on top of all this content, because you guys put out a lot of content.
Yeah.
How many writers on staff do you have hounding the beat that is business of cannabis?
Yeah, we've got, we had some struggles during the pandemic when we couldn't host live events. So we've had some downsizing that unfortunately occurred last year, which was really difficult to work through. But I mean, we've got a whole team of journalists, and these people are professional journalists and researchers, and we've got, 15 to 20 when you include graphic designers and all the pieces that need to fit together to do this. And we've got a print magazine, Marijuana Business Magazine. So we have a whole ecosystem that all works together, whether it's on the website or Hemp Industry Daily or the fact book or the magazine, that all works together with the live events to really, support and help the people in the industry do things right, do things successfully, and learn from mistakes of either themselves or from others or from us.
Yeah, the mistakes in this industry can be extremely costly.
Yes. And they're made all the time. Everyone makes them, even the most successful companies and people in the industry. I've made plenty.
I like to joke that a lot of these investors just don't know how to do a Google search. Like there was a reason 10 years ago, people used to get Shenago, get scammed. But now, before you sign that contract or whatever, might want to look that person up and check out their past history, because that's the thing about cannabis, right? People are afraid to just say, "Hey, I want to be a part of this," or "I make my money at this," or it's so weird just to be associated with it. Like what other cause? Like, can you lose your job for speaking out for it? Like, it's ridiculous. So, But yeah, no, you got great content. When's the next event coming up?
It's the week of October 18th in Las Vegas, and we've got some things that Tuesday, the 19th, that are like kind of pre-sessions for finance and science and hemp.
Ooh.
And then the main show kicks off on the 20th. And again, we're in two big halls in the Las Vegas Convention Center. We're trending really well in terms of interest and attendees and exhibitors. And, didn't really know what to expect. We had a great year in 2019, record year. And then we had 2020 where we weren't able to host it. We had to go virtual. And so it's kind of like when we came out of this, can we do it? Which 6 months ago, we're like, yeah, we think we can do it. Let's hope things don't, get worse. And now we're off to the races, but didn't know how the industry would respond. We heard good things, but we're really seeing that the cannabis industry is eager to get back in person, as most people are, but there's an exponential effect here because cannabis, as you were saying earlier, is built on the culture and interconnectivity, right? That's how it was built. That's the cultural side, puff, puff, pass, as you said before, but it's also how business has been done and how the industry was created. And so out of all industries out there, I think this is among the top that's the most excited to be like, okay, we need to get around each other again, right? That's how we're going to push everything forward.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I didn't have the budget for MJBizCon booths. Those suckers spendy. But I mean, how many exhibitors are you guys having?
I think we're over 1,200 now.
Nice.
I think we just got to 1,200.
That's awesome.
So we're basically right where we were in 2019, which is saying something because we're coming out of the pandemic. There are people who are obviously hesitant to travel and figuring out where they're comfortable. And so we see other events outside of cannabis that are coming back at about 50% of where they were in 2019. So our show floor is roaring. We're coming out of the gates here. Our attendee, we're getting a lot of traction with attendees, and we don't release numbers until after, but we're really pleased with how that's going. It's holding up really well, and we're going to have the critical mass there. And a lot of people are waiting to the last minute too to decide. They don't want to go.
It's not my fault. I had already made the decision. Spirit Airlines. The Spirit Airlines are
Spirit Airlines.
I'm supposed to be doing the Gangier thing, and then you have to go from Humboldt to Sacramento, and then Spirit Air is screwing with that. But so it's at the convention center. I've never really been to Vegas. So where would I consider lodging then? That's close or adjacent to the convention center.
Well, the hotel blocks that we have across the city with the major hotels and casinos on the strip, we're almost sold out of the ones where we have partnerships and we give discounts like that. It's I think we're at 90%, 98%. There's a lot of places to stay in Vegas though. So the convention center is on an end of the strip that was kind of dilapidated for a while, but they just built this huge new resort complex called Resort World. So there's a lot of options there, and you can go from staying in a cheap shady motel to spending thousands of dollars in a penthouse. They've got options everywhere.
Also, Matt, internet, cleanliness. That's really it. If I have those two things, I can work. You
can get that there.
Yeah. Who do you recommend should go? Like growers and dispensary owners? Like what range of in the industry? Who do you think should benefit?
We really built this as the show for the entire industry, and there's benefits and downsides of that. The downsides are you can't be everything to everyone, right? And we've gotten so big that and there's so many elements of the industry. It's not like other industries that might be focused on one specific thing, like computer chips. We've got all across the supply chain, retail, cultivation, processing, right? Then you got ancillary, and then you got consumer-facing companies that are developing products for consumers. So, and they need a B2B angle too. So we really try and bring the entire industry together because what we realized is if we just did a cultivation conference, and there's ones out there, the industry is connected throughout. So you can get some benefits because you can hone in on just cultivation, but you're missing everything that goes around it to make it successful. So, we can't be everything to everyone. We can't obviously get everything. We can't go as deep in some areas as we want, but that's not our point. It's the point. The point is to get this industry together and foster all of these niches. And then you have the spin-off things like after hours parties where you were mentioning before. That's a great part of the ecosystem we created. And some people say, I had a great deal there. I met an investor. I met a partner. It might be on the show floor. It might be at a after party, at Caesar's Palace.
What? Because I mean, Dan, you have a lot of booths and they're filled up. Like I really would want to. I love these events. Like one out here, CannaCon, one of the other ones. I've been to. I know the guys, but I just really enjoyed the hobnobbing, the variety of to see different from scale manufacturers to extraction specialists. The gamut of people that attend these events, and it's worth it. In my opinion, if you're making money, if you're invested somehow in the industry, you should attend these things. In your guys' event, it's definitely been one that friends of mine that go to it, because I'm friends with people who make money in the industry. I don't make money in this industry. I've been doing this activist thing, and now Tom and I are doing the YouTube thing. So one day I'll get out, but your event's definitely one that I would definitely want to hit, because those kind of things, like you're hitting the business adult side, right? So you're saying this, the first days is tech and science.
First days we have some specialty separately ticketed tracks that are finance, science, hemp, those sorts of things.
Are they going to be like a speaker forums, or
it's like a full day pre-conference just dedicated to those topics.
That's you get information when you go to these things. You learn.
That's the focus of it, is the education. Yep.
Yeah.
Now, the investment aspect and the finance aspect of it's so important, especially now in the social equity world that we live in. Trying to raise money is going to be a very obvious thing that most of the teams that are going to be awarded a license are going to have to do.
Yeah.
It's not like even if you go to Oklahoma, you still have to spend the money to build the grow out or to open the retail location. And your regulations are going to be higher than Oklahoma. It's not going to be Oklahoma, New Jersey, or New York. If anything, it'll probably be more like an Illinois or a California regulated market, where it's going to be expensive to operate. And so those types of capital partners are really they're going to be required. Otherwise, the social equity applicants that are just going to be out there.
Yeah. And that's the big change we've seen in recent years too, is in a lot of cases you need financial backing to start companies. You used to be able, some of the initial entrepreneurs in Denver that started, they opened with $20,000 and that was it, or $20,000 worth of weed.
Yeah.
And then did it out of their home and then opened a storefront. Those days are gone in most states. And that's the thing. It varies by state. And there are some that are more inexpensive than others to get started. But now, more often than not, you need hundreds of thousands, if not into the millions, to open licensed businesses. Cultivation can be very expensive because some states, you have to show you have $1.5 million in liquid capital. Mm-hmm. And then you got to secure your real estate in some states before you even know if you win a license.
That's how you have to lock it up. And then you have to have liquidity of $250,000 to be eligible for one dispo in Ohio. And so that type of aspect is it's just there. And then when they're trying to do the social equity and award licenses thusly, trying to get that to have its capital partner on board is going to be a trick. And it's interesting how New Jersey's approaching it. It looks like the whole financial markets that are there and the hedge funds and stuff have kind of infiltrated it with this financial source agreement and passive investors. And so it's going to be interesting to see if there's going to be portfolio social equity companies that investors could, finance appropriately.
Yeah, and we get a lot of the investing is a big part of MJBizCon because a lot of investors are there, right? They're not walking around with a giant sign on their neck saying, "I'm an investor, come talk to me," right? But they're there, right? And they're looking for opportunities. They don't want 100 people to trample them. I think the investing side is growing, and is what you're seeing is more serious big investors and savvy investors are getting in. It used to be, there was a crop of investors with that background that had pioneered their side of the industry, like Poseidon Asset Management and people associated with ArcView. There was an early wave that had that background and they took the chances. Now you're seeing the people who are really looking are like, hedge fund, Wall Street people. Yeah. And that might make some people cringe with reasonably so. But I'm just pointing out that this is an iteration that the big money is now taking this seriously.
And then one of the things that Miggy does is he works on standards and processes, so ISOs and other stuff. And as the federal legalization becomes a reality, I don't think you're going to see those requirements for GMP compliance go away if they're in Canada. And so that's just going to produce a higher cost of entry. So if you're not even growing to those types of standards yet, you're going to need to in the future. And then standing up a grow or a manufacturer will become more costly. And then what happens if the FDA starts to regulate the dispensing end of it, you know?
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, because if you're playing a long game in this industry and you're getting in and you have the wherewithal to do it, you should be setting the bar high for your operations and pretending like the FDA and the government is regulating it and follow other industry models. Because if you build your business on a lower level and then something changes and the federal government steps in, you're going to have a hard slog there to get up to the standard. So that's what you're seeing companies do. They're using the best packaging regulations that they could find, for instance, on their products. And they're just like, we're going to go with these, right? And the best manufacturing best practices and guidelines, because if you start there, then you don't have to rearrange everything if and when there's stricter regulations or government oversight.
Oh,
well,
yeah.
you know, okay.
We're doing a grow in Illinois now. And so as we're getting the plans together, I'm like, no, you should just do it. Because are you going to be using this in 2 years when it's federally legal? Yes. There you go. Do it, you know?
Yeah. Well, it's a whole QMS. You know, when you have a quality management system, it's going to encompass everything. And then, you know, if you meet FDA specs, else below, you know, it's fundamental. They're all going to be in line, you know, as long as you're not doing something corrupt, you know.
But it requires a higher capital infusion. And so you have these twin goals, the lowering of the barrier to entry and the empowerment of the social equity or social justice or the impact applicants to have licenses in this industry. And then the higher cost of doing business because of the regulatory compliance that you're forcing on them.
Yeah, and that's why I was saying, if you have the wherewithal, because I completely agree and not oblivious to the fact that most businesses aren't able to do that across their company and go the highest level of everything. So if you do, you should. And if you can get there, or you can pick a piece of your business that you can do that, because I get it. You don't want to spend all this money and time, and it might not materialize for 5 years, right? And you're like, well, why are we way up here and invested all this money and stuff? And, you know, that we don't even know when that's going to pay off, but it will pay off if you do it, because those are standards that other industries have found that work and are key to producing quality products and selling them and getting trust. So I would also argue that it's probably still worth the investment, because these are things that work and create a sustainable industry.
What's funny, Chris, is, you know, I'm doing a good job when no one knows I exist. You know, like that's what the quality system enables. Like, you know, you have your checks and balances. Nothing's going to go bad in the long run. You know, your product's always going to be consistent. You know, that's you know, like you were saying, Tom, with the entry and the barrier. You know, and again though, is opening a lemonade stand versus opening a restaurant, right? You're gonna have a restaurant. You're gonna be in code with the local you know, building codes, and then also your cleanliness code for the kitchen itself, you know, and then now just add weed. You know what I mean? That's what most people don't wrap their heads around when it comes to cannabis. Is we call it medical, and then, you know, we have this vision in our head, what is medical, but it's still just a plant, and that fundamentally can just add weed. Whatever you're doing in real life, like you're doing reporting and journalism on business, now you just add weed. You know, it's just, I just wish people get their heads wrapped around that cannabis is not this like heroin. That's the problem. You know, the scheduling confuses people. It's like, what if we're going to infuse everything with coffee? You know, like, you know, I'm going to have coffee ice cream, coffee pizza, for God forbid, whatever. You can infuse shit, if anything. And now just weed.
Yeah, but
what's the word weed?
People don't like to change, Miggy.
But I'm saying
they've already made up their mind. When you're going to give them something that confuses them because they've already made up their mind, they just don't listen. And so that's why California is still like half illegal, you know?
Well, like, Chris, you've been in the industry for 10 years. What other industries have you seen that kind of like want to be infused?
I think the early adopters, the outside industries that started taking a look when it wasn't cool, or it was always cool, but when it wasn't mainstream, was, I think it was the vendors in the agricultural sector. It's the companies that build greenhouses and supply lighting to grow on a mass scale to traditional farmers. They were among the first to say, hey, this is exactly what we do. It's just a different type of plant. And we're going to take a risk. And even though, our mainstream clientele may not like it, we're going to open up this little division called green something or other, right? So that they don't see the direct connection. Those have been in it for years. And you even have, Scott's Miracle Grow got in years ago. And they took a big chance, getting into this federally illegal industry when big companies weren't doing that. That's where I saw the really initial outside interest of like putting big bets on the industry and understanding the opportunity. And whether it's other industries or the people in the industry that made their, that they really pioneered this, I applaud everyone, because there were risks and there were professional and legal stigmas around this, and so, how do you find the best opportunities? You take risks and you're out there at the beginning and out front in a lot of cases. And so everyone who did that, it's hopefully paying off for them. And it wasn't an easy thing to make that decision. Even when we started this company, it's like, we built our careers. Marijuana still has a stigma. I remember when we first started and I was trying to understand the industry, I was spending all day, every day researching marijuana laws and regulations. But I did have a thought a couple weeks in, like, I hope I hope I'm not triggering some kind of, flags with the federal government because,
it could be a thing.
Yeah. Oh man, no, we've been on lists. Like, so some of our stuff on social media has always been flagged. And so like we have this fairly large Facebook page that's got about 300,000 likes on it. But around like 7 years ago or 6 years ago now, it hit an algorithm update and then it just went dead. Yeah. And so they didn't delete it. It just gets muted. And so sometimes like YouTube and so we have to be very conscientious not to swear, not to smoke on the air. And still, like I did a piece about, status of
which you've both done, by the way.
Pardon?
All of which you've both done during this
podcast. Well, we try our best. We said try. He's a lawyer. He's got the right words.
Still, you'll get flagged. I mean, you just have to watch out for it. I mean, like it's been impossible to try to advertise anything on the internet regarding your cannabis business. I'm starting to see some of them. Have you guys ever been able to buy like Google ads to market your trade shows and your products?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back and forth since we don't touch the plant. It's even more gray. I mean, if you're a dispensary or infused products company, there's one set of rules. If you're in what we do or what you do, it's really tricky. We had our social media temporarily suspended even recently. We've been around for 10 years and we don't sell marijuana, right? We help the industry and we were able to get it back up quickly, but you never know what's going to happen with social media, with advertising, who's going to take you, who's not. They might take you one time and then the wrong person sees it at the company and says, what's this? So it's a mess. And that's one of the challenges of operating in cannabis.
I've tried to advertise, like, because the applications in Illinois are complex as heck. And as we're, on a deadline to get your application for administrative review on file today, I have no idea why I can't advertise services to these people to help them apply for this, which has been legal in that state and is extremely confusing and complex.
Yeah, it's mind-boggling when you think of the banking situation and big banks can't serve the industry. Oh, great, we have $20 billion. A lot of it can't be banked. It makes no sense. You can't advertise, even though it's legal in 38 states, and most people live in a state that has legalized, and most people support legalization by a wide margin. Like if you came out of space,
right,
this for the first time, you'd be like, "What the hell is going on here?"
Or like, just congratulations, you've won the title of stupidest race I've ever met.
Yeah, we've never encountered a more ignorant species. Right?
So for MJ Biz Daily, though, because you are a media website, you are a journalism, and there are packages out there that advertising packages that people will sell and then in bulk and then get placed in different media ads. Are you allowed to be part of those media packages? Can you say, hey, throw our name in your, I don't know what they're called, like group or whatever. But are you allowed? Are you allowed to play like other media people?
No, we still have areas that are difficult. I mean, there's some traditional mainstream. Google has been one of them, which you mentioned. It can be difficult, if not impossible, depending on the day. That's why we serve as a main advertising vehicle for the industry, not to consumers, right? That's not our audience, but anyone who's trying to reach the business audience, because of all these restrictions, makes what we do even more attractive, because that's what we do. But you might not get the mainstream ad services they're going to let you do it.
No, I mean, but that's true. And so I've looked at your guys' traffic on MJBizDaily.com. You guys have amazing traffic. And so if we have this new product that we're launching for helping people understand the cannabis industry better and streamline their applications, I would definitely consider advertising on a publication like that, because that is a relevant audience. It's not just going out.
Yeah, and that's what we've built over the years, is that this is a targeted audience. So you know what you're getting. It's not, if I wrote about some dog that was cured with cannabis of a tumor, our traffic could be quadruple, right? But it wouldn't be the right people. Yeah. It would be just someone who says, "Oh, that's cute," or so we don't do stuff like that. But we also have our newsletters, which people subscribe to, which are free. But that's another source of how we found the companies in the industry can get in front of potential clients by being advertising in newsletters and stuff. So that's our whole giant ecosystem that we try to create.
Totally, man. Hey, thanks for joining us. I know you got to go here in a hard stop. Well, when's the next? When's MJBizCon in Vegas? And are there COVID protocols?
Yeah, it's basically the week of the 18th. There's festivities all over the place the entire week, but the main conference is the 20th, which is a Wednesday through that Friday. And COVID is interesting. We're following CDC and the Nevada and Las Vegas guidance, and so our show, everyone has to be masked up indoors in Vegas, no matter where you are. All the casinos, all the hotels. So we're implementing that too. We've spaced things out more so people can spread out. You might have seen pictures of 2 or 3 years ago, and it's just packed convention hall. So we spread things out so people feel safe that way. And we're encouraging everyone to get vaccinated, but it's not a requirement.
Right on.
But masks are, so I can't be like, but I have a card.
Yeah.
Still have to wear the mask.
Yeah.
Oh, right on, man. Thank you, dude.